Hey folks, hope everybody's doing well. Welcome back to another hack show. Haven't done these in a while, but when I get a great guest lined up, which I've been trying to get Sean on now for a couple months because Sean is a busy dude. So been able to get Sean in, and Sean is what I guess you would consider a journeyman musician because he's been doing it his whole life, and he's carved a livelihood for himself out of the music business, which is not an easy thing to do. So bring Sean in here, and we'll find out how he's been able to do it for so long. Hey, Sean, welcome, man.
Hey, Walter, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Great to have you on. Let me just do something here real quick. Hang on here a second. There we go. Okay, so let's just say hello to a few people that have popped in here so far. We got Zach's in here. Welcome, Rebel, Rocker. Nice to see you. Ed B, Mitch Heyman. Nice to see you. Cool. All right, so usually I start off by asking what was the first, what got you into playing guitar in the first place? What was the band? What was the maybe a particular musician or family member? What got you interested in playing music in the first place?
Yeah, it was Twisted Sister. Twisted Sister, We're Not Gonna Take It. That was before, there was probably, I guess it was Quiet Riot and Pyromania were the records where I started really getting into hard rock and Shout at the Devil. But you know what? It was hearing Twisted Sister where I said, I want to do that. I want to look like those guys. I want to play that song. I need to know how to do that.
Wow, that's a first. I've never heard Twisted Sister. That's a first on this.
Nothing wrong with that. One of the most underrated guitar players in my mind. One of the most natural, beautiful guitar players around. I love him. I love JJ French too. Love that band.
Cool. So, I mean, are you like a self-taught guy, or were you fortunate enough to get lessons?
Very fortunate. I did take lessons. I studied with an incredible guitar teacher in my hometown, North Bay, Ontario, by the name of Brian McDowell, who was very, very patient and fantastic guitarist, great musician. Really prepped me for what I would inevitably end up doing. So I was very lucky.
Oh, cool. So were you like, was he teaching? What was it like? Was he one of these very structured guys? We're going to go through this entire Mel Bay book and then we're going to get into something else? Or
well, it's funny because I didn't really tell him what I was into. I just told my parents I wanted to play guitar, and they got me guitar. Spent the first year just jumping in front of the mirror with it. I got that down pretty quick. And then after that, I went to take lessons. But yeah, it was starting off with Tom Dooley and all this stuff in the Mel Bay book. And but I wasn't practicing any of that. So one day he phoned my mom and he said, "Look, I'm sorry, Mrs. Kelly, but your son, I don't think he's cut out for this. He never practiced." My mom said, "What do you mean? He plays all day, every day."
Right.
I was teaching myself the rock stuff, but he was showing me this. And then he was like, "Oh, that's what you're into? Okay, let's do this." And then we shifted gears, and he started teaching me, more chords and harmony. And eventually I studied classical guitar with him, and that prepped me to go on and study at university. So it was funny. My guitar lessons almost ended abruptly, but I just didn't know that I could play the rock stuff with him.
Oh, that's cool. The fact that he's versatile enough to show you that and then open the whole door to classical, which is a whole other thing, is pretty. You struck gold with that instructor, that's for sure.
100%, and he's still teaching, and yeah, great guy. I had a lot of great teachers in North Bay. Like even like my high school music teacher was phenomenal. And even the guys at Music City at the music store, you know, all took time to mentor and show you stuff. And, you know, it was a wonderful music community up there. Still is.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I had no idea. So when did the band start? When did you first start? I guess do you have like the high school band thing going?
Yeah. You know, I guess in grade 10, I had the good fortune to have a locker beside a guy who was a bass player and also a popular guy at school. And, you know, he saw me with my guitar, and we kind of threw together a band for the high school talent show. And, you know, we were smart enough to get the captain of the football team to be the singer. He couldn't really sing, but it didn't matter because, you know, we were stacking the deck.
Right.
But, you know, as soon as I could play 3 chords, I had an ambition to play with other musicians, and we did that. And then a year later, I was playing in the bars. I was playing from a very young age, doing like kind of the top 40 thing.
Wow, that's cool.
In bars in Northern Ontario, and kind of on the Thursday, Friday, Saturday run, you know, during doing high school too, you know. So it was a good education.
That's what was your
bad education?
What was your like first guitar? What were you slinging at that point?
Well, the first one was a pawn shop special. Like my dad, God rest his soul, bought me, for $50, like, you know, like cellophane pickups and like, you know, broken Bigsby and like, you name it, you know. Right. But I loved that guitar and I played it to death. And then I moved up to a Series A Super Strat. And that to me was like the height of styling, right? Until one day at school, someone said, "Oh, that's a piece of crap." I was so heartbroken, right? I was like, what do you mean? This is a Series A guitar. It says Series A. It's got to be the best. But my next guitar is still one of my main guitars. I was fortunate enough to get a Fender Esprit. I don't know if you're familiar with the Fender Esprit.
No.
It was a 1984 Fender Esprit model. And it was when Gibson and Fender were kind of swapping roles. Gibson started trying to make a Super Strat, and Fender kind of tried to make a Les Paul style guitar, although this was a double cutaway. You might know it as the Robin Ford model, but anyway, okay. I have a Fender Esprit, had like the Schaller custom humbucker, beautiful guitar, very unique chambered, you know, solid body guitar. I still play it to this day. It's still, you know, a staple for me when I'm doing sessions or doing records. And yeah, so that was my main guitar, that Fender Esprit. I played that, and then, you know, I bought a Japanese Strat at the House Guitars, which I loved. Family went on a trip and I got a Japanese Strat. So in those early days, though, it was really the Fender Esprit.
Cool. What were you using for amps in the bars back then? Marshalls or?
Yeah, I had a Marshall. I didn't have I had a Marshall, a solid state Marshall. I didn't even have a tube amp until, God, I don't think I had a tube amp until I had my first record deal. Oh, and that's the truth. I didn't know the difference. I honestly, I had a solid state using Kettner. I had I'd borrow and steal, plug into people's rigs. The first time I played through a tube amp was opening for Colin James and Wild Tea in the Spirit.
Oh, man.
I was 17 and we were playing at our local arena in North Bay. And I think it was Tony Springer said, "Hey man, you can't play this. This is a big place. Plug into my rig." They let us play their back line. And we showed up without a sound guy or anything. Like I had hustled that gig because I was the president of my students' council in high school. So I went to the local promoter when I saw they were playing. I said, "Hey man, I'll sell tickets on the announcements if you let my band open up."
Right.
So anyway, long story short, all of a sudden I plug in a tube amp and go, "Oh geez, that sounds really nice." So that was where my first time, and I didn't make those connections. I was almost like a little attention deficit when it came to tones and stuff like that. I just wanted to get up and get running and make the sound, and then start playing gigs and figure out how to make records. Like I was kind of putting the cart before the horse, really. I didn't figure out. I've kind of figured out my sound along the way, working with producers and engineers on records.
I just want to thank Rebel Rocker. Thank you so much for the super chat. Much appreciated. Yeah, you know, because back then, I mean, that was, before the internet, before you all this stuff was available to you. So you didn't really know. I mean, when I started playing, I had no idea. Like, I wanted something that looked like Ace Frehley's guitar. I know
Yeah.
I like the humbucker, right? I didn't know
Yeah.
it's called the humbucker, but I know I wanted something that looked like, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I had no idea. I mean, I'm playing out of a solid state PV backstage.
Yeah.
You don't know anything about tone. I mean, you don't learn about, and I played like 300 shows, and I had no concept of tone, and it was probably sounding horrid, but you just don't know, right?
Well, I mean, I knew that there was like I remember like a couple of aha moments, like where a buddy had an MXR overdrive and I step on, I go, oh wow.
Well, that sounds good.
That
Yeah.
sounds like wow, I can play Heaven's on Fire. That sounds like Heaven's on Fire now. Okay.
Right.
So distortion, clean. Okay, there's two. So you start there. Then you get a delay pedal and you futz around with it, and maybe you can sound like the Edge a little bit or David Gilmour, or it's all this kind of rudimentary stuff. But eventually,
Yeah.
you accrue knowledge and experience, and people kind of hip you to things. You see things through a different prism, and yeah, you start to develop an aesthetic. But I think there's something to be said for having to make something that might not be optimal gear wise work with your hands. And that's part of the classical guitar thing, finding the sweet spots on your guitar or pickup combination, volume and attack.
Right.
And that's kind of more where I kind of come from. Like, I mean, if I have a Fender Deluxe and Les Paul, I'm kind of good. I can get through the weekend style,
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure.
Well, I don't know
For
if I'm style, but I can get through the weekend.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So all right. So you're open. I mean, Tony's Wild Tea in the Spirit. I mean, a lot of the folks that are watching are from the US, so they don't know who this guy was. But this guy in the early 90s was like a beast guitar player. He played a Strat. He was like, he had that whole Hendrix vibe going.
Yeah.
I saw that guy. He was
Still plays like a monster. He's just incredible.
Yeah.
Player.
Yeah.
And how cool for a guy like that to see this kid.
Yeah.
And help him out. And the drummer's letting us play. And the front of house, I'll mix you. We'll do lights. No, you don't walk on that side. You walk on this side. It's an arena, right? Like it was a big show.
Right.
We just showed up like classic.
Yeah. You guys thought it was like another bar, right? And it's like,
well, yeah, there must be someone. There's that guy who does the things at the front.
Yeah. Crazy. That is crazy.
And it was great. They made it so great.
Yeah. Well, you got good sound guys worth his weight in salt, man.
Oh,
but
sure.
so all right, so you're doing the high school thing. So what's the next step? Where do we go from here?
Well, next, I figured I needed to go someplace to a big city, because I looked on the back of records and I saw, okay, where are the records made? Well,
Right.
In Canada, it was Toronto. So I was like, oh yeah, Warner Brothers on, Birchmount Road, Scarborough. Okay, well, I guess I better. Yeah. Look, they were all in a bigger city. So I was initially wanting to go to GIT in LA because I'd read Guitar World and I said, oh, I'll go there. And my parents, very supportive. They said, you could do that, but why don't you go someplace like, there's a big city in Canada. Go to Montreal or Toronto and go study, and you'll get better at what you do. And then, in their mind, they're thinking, and you'll have something to fall back on. Probably, right? But for me, that was a way I could go, and I didn't have a lot of dough, but I could get a student loan and go study at school, and that's what I did. I went and I auditioned, and I had a choice to go to either McGill or to U of T, and I went to U of T because
that's the University of Toronto, folks. For those who don't, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's okay. University of Toronto, and I studied with the maestro Elie Kasner, one of the greatest proponents of classical guitar in Canada. He brought classical guitar to Canada. He was a student of Segovia, and I had a chance to study with Elie, who had taught my teacher in North Bay, and that was a magical experience. And for 3 years, I did 3 years at U of T, and I did my last year out in Vancouver at UBC, because I just hooked up with the singer from a band called Images in Vogue, a guy named Dale, and we were writing songs and working on some development deal stuff. Anyway, but when I first moved to Toronto, I found first thing I wanted to do was find a bunch of long hair guys and make a band. And, there was a lot more guys who had long hair and kind of had that look in Toronto. And I met all guys from university, which was great. And two of them were from New Jersey. I thought that was very exotic because Skid Row was from New Jersey. I said, "Oh, this is right. Wow, Americans! Like I'm going to play with an American band. Okay, this is great."
Yeah.
And you know, we threw the band together, and I was a hustler, right? So I remember phoning up, and I phoned up Donnie Blaze, who was a booking agent at the Gasworks.
Oh, the Gasworks,
man. Yeah. I'm a hustler. I go to university. I'm going to bring a lot of people. And he got us a slot opening up for a band called Psycho Circus, who was on Anthem Records. And we show up, we do the gig. Sure enough, we meet this woman who's a manager, and she introduces us to Jamie Stewart from a band called The Cult, who had just moved here from England. Next thing you know, he's producing a demo for us. So I'm thinking, this is great. You just show up in a big city, throw a band together. It's easy, right?
Right.
It wasn't so easy. But we made the demo. I learned a lot. Didn't get the deal. Things were changing from, you know, the kind of the big hair stuff to.
So what year are we talking about here? Just
91.
91. Okay, that's when the shift started happening. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it was still cool. Like, you know, like it's funny because I loved all that stuff, like, you know, the Van Halens, the Motley Crue, all that kind of 80s stuff.
80s metal,
I didn't feel like it was such a stretch to be into Jane's Addiction or Pearl Jam or anything. That just seemed like the next extension. But certain elements of the way I played at the time were not happening. Like my reference points were too classic rock or too hard rock or metal. So there was some lean years there where I actually shifted focus and said, well, hey, if I'm going to do this, I better get current. So I kind of started diversifying my playing a bit, which was a good thing. And I ended up hooking up in 95 with a guy named Chad Richardson, singer-songwriter from Newfoundland. And we ended up winning the Q107 homegrown contest and getting a deal with Aquarius Records. So that was my first experience getting a record deal. So anyway, was a long-winded way of saying kind of how I got from ground zero to my first taste of actually having a record deal, going to the studio, and then going on a tour.
No, that's cool. I mean, it actually, there was a point there in the early 90s where guitar solos weren't cool and being able to play well wasn't cool, right?
Well, it's funny, like the overt virtuosity was kind of looked down on, but what I realize now, and I really realized it actually in this last Lee Aaron record I did, how much of an effect the best bands from the 90s had on my playing, like Stone Temple Pilots, like Dean Delio. I love his playing.
He's incredible.
The guys in Pearl Jam, Gossard and who's the other guy?
McCready. Mike McCready.
Those two guys had a cool thing. There was Dave Navarro on those early Jane's records. There was a lot of good stuff coming, but there was also a bit of a looking down your nose. Like if you dared put your right hand on the neck of a guitar at finger tap, I mean, that'd be the end of you. And certain types of gear, it was a style thing. It was a seismic shift in taste.
Yeah.
With Kurt Cobain's and everything, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So you get that record deal. So was that your first? Did you put a band together around that and tour?
Well, that was Chad Richardson. That was under his name.
Okay.
And Chad was a songwriter, but he was great. Like we all kind of went in. He insisted, no, this is my band. We're gonna cut the record, and we cut that first record together, and then jumped in a van and went coast to coast, opening for like the Headstones or Holly McNarland or whoever. We had an agent. They'd put us on dates. Toured with a BMG act called Mrs. Torrance, and unfortunately, it was a great record. It's called The Legends of Brud. If you can find it out there, it's a Chad, great songwriter. He ended up starring in Rent on Broadway and having quite a good career in the music industry. Cool, so he did just fine. But it didn't fly and got dropped, right? Like it, and he went on to we did another independent record, but yeah, that was it. But shortly thereafter, like I said, I hooked up with Dale Martindale from Images in Vogue. And we had a band called 69 Duster, made an independent record. Once again, shopped it around, kind of had some record interest, never quite took off. But yeah, and from there I played in a band called Vibrolux. which was a Toronto band. Once again, we had management. There was a deal at one point with a US label. It didn't quite go. So yeah, after all that, I said, well, I gave it a shot. I better figure out what I'm going to do. And I ended up going to teacher's college.
Okay, cool.
It took a year to go to teacher's college. Best thing I ever did in my life. Because what that ended up doing was giving me freedom. I alleviated the pressure of having to, not be myself, trying to figure out who I was. So once I came back to Toronto, I started supply teaching and I said, you know what? Now it doesn't matter. I'm going to make the music I want to make because I don't care anymore. I can feed myself. I'm good. Yeah. And that's when I started writing music for the Crash Kelly project. And Crash Kelly was my band. And I said, I'm going to make a 70s glam meets early 80s Sunset Strip band. This is what I dig. I'm going to write these types of songs. And that connected to a degree. And next thing you know, I throw a band together, get some interest, and then we're off in England touring with the London Choir Boys, and enough's enough, and life's good, in the early 2000s.
Yeah, well, that the timing was perfect because all that stuff kind of came back later on, right? It was cool.
Well, it was amazing when we were over there in 2003. We were touring with the London Choir Boys. The Darkness was just coming out.
Oh yeah.
And it was blowing up. And next thing you know, we had a deal with an indie label over there. We're hearing our songs in the clubs. I'm going, what the hell's going on? How do they know this? Yeah. There seemed to be a resurgence of this kind of rock with that the Darkness was leading,
right?
Which never came to full fruition. But a label in the US called Century Media, which is a really big heavy metal label, started a rock imprint, and they signed Hanoi Rocks, a band from Sweden called the Helicopters. They had Fu Manchu, and they signed us. So Liquor and Poker Music. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink, say no more. But Liquor and Poker Music, they signed Crash Kelly. And we had an American record deal and got to tour the States. We did 5 weeks with Alice Cooper across America. It was amazing.
Oh, that's a great experience, man.
It was incredible. And I'm fronting a band. I can't sing. Doesn't matter. I'm still doing it. So it was great.
Do you got any stories, road stories? I mean, you mentioned Alice Cooper. I mean, there's a bunch of people in here who love to hear something about
Alice. Man. You know what? It was such an amazing experience and such a learning experience because, first of all, you got a world-class band, but to see how he treats people, so much respect for the support band, the catering, his band, the crew, his fans, the dedication to his craft. He's out there every sound check, making sure everything's right, working on the show. And the catalog of great music, I got to see that every night. And then to see him take the time and, say, hey, man, our light guy's going to work with you. Why don't you switch your first song, your last song around? Unbelievable.
Wow.
And he was a wonderful guy. And, that was my first chance getting to play in kind of bigger places. And we got to do a couple of arenas with him. And
sweet.
Wonderful, man. Just those are, and it was an interesting thing, man, because we didn't have a crew. It was just us. So I remember going out with my hoodie on and plugging in all this stuff, coming out with my spangly suit and everything, do the show, run back, throw the hoodie back on and hauling the gear off, right? But by the end of the crew, tour, their crew's doing that. They're just chipping in, right? We bonded.
Oh, that's cool, man.
And we were good Canadian boys though too. They didn't hear from us until it was time to hear from us, right?
Right.
That's a good way to ingratiate yourself. But in fact, I think their tour manager said, "You know what I like about you? I never know you're here until it's time to play. I don't even know you're around. I like that."
So we got a comment actually. This is from Marco's Images. He's saying, Sean Kelly, I saw you talking with the Toque band. Great talk recently. Great guys. Looking forward to reading your book.
Yeah, man.
So you got a book coming out. Okay, we got to talk about that. All right, cool. So Crash Kelly. So how did you go from Crash Kelly to Nelly Furtado? Or that was like that, because that's like you're going from playing like like you were saying classic rock to that. How that happen?
Well, it was interesting because the Crash Kelly thing ran its course. We put out a couple of records and kind of had its peak and was kind of going down. And I said, okay, well, you know what? That was cool. But before I joined Nelly, I joined Helix. I had a chance to join the band Helix, and I've been bugging Brian Vollmer for years to get into Helix. I was sending him email, and he's like, "Look, buddy, leave me alone. I don't have a gig for you. What can I say?" But a good pal of mine, Mitch Lafone, Brian. Yeah, Mitch is a great guy. He brought and been a great supporter. He's helped me out with many gigs.
I've had Mitch on the channel. Yeah,
Mitch, when he was looking for bass player, he goes, "Give Sean a chance." He goes, "That guy, okay." So he said, "Come on, audition." So I went out and I auditioned on bass. I don't even think he knew I played guitar, but I went to audition on bass and I got the gig, and I was so happy, man. Like Helix and Honeymoon Suite were the first two bands I ever saw in concert. So to play with Helix, and like it was a dream come true, and I was thrilled, man. I thought this was definitely like the apex of my career. I said, "Hey, man, if nothing else happens in my life, I'm playing with this great band, and Brent Durner just joined the band again. I'm just, I was thrilled." So we played a few shows, going great. Went to Tulsa, played Rocklahoma with like Rat and Night Ranger. This is great. And I get a call from my old guitar tech who had been working with Nelly Furtado. He said, "Hey, man, you play classical guitar, don't you?" And I said, yeah. Because I put out some classical guitar records and forgot about that. There's that whole classical guitar thing. That's another.
Yeah, we're going to swing into that at some point, yeah.
But so he knew about that. And he said, "Well, Nelly's got this Spanish record. She needs someone who can play classical guitar, but also rock. And the guitar player is leaving." Turns out, though, her guitar player is leaving, went to university with me.
Oh, wow.
I had this two-way connection who could talk to the music director and recommend me. But the music director going, "But isn't the guy in Helix? Like, how does this work?" So I showed up. They got called, and I said, "Well, at first I said, I'm not the guy for you. I don't play this type of music. I don't even listen to it. Like, I knew one song, I knew she was huge. She was the biggest pop star in the world at the time. But I'm going, this isn't for me. I don't do that." Well, I went down, and I met them, and I played some guitar for the music director. He goes, okay, well, let's give it a try. And it was my first time, like, I'm in the big Sony sound stage, and all of a sudden I have to wear in-ear monitors. I'm going, where's my wedge?
Oh, man.
Wedges, man. Fuck, in-ears, okay. So I mix, I don't know, I can't hear. I'm playing through some weird amp. The guitar player wants me to use his pedals and his patches, and I'm going, what the hell? Like, so I'm swimming on this, right? They like the Spanish guitar thing, but I'm going, and then I'm starting to get a little flack, it's like, come on, man, gotta be quick if you're gonna get this. I'm going, yeah. And at one point he goes, "Man, what's with that sound?" I said, "You know what? F this." Ripped out the ear. I said, "Get me a wedge." I turned the amp up. I dimed it. I said, "Let's go." And I played like I play. I said, "If I'm going out, I'm going to go out the way I go." And then the music director goes, "Oh, so you can play. Great. Okay, let's move on." So lesson there, be yourself. And anyway, it worked out great. And you know what? As much as I'm joking around when I say that stuff, there's a kernel of truth there. But the truth of the matter is that gig was incredible on so many levels, but the best one was the diversity in the music and getting to play with such world-class musicians and a world-class artist like Nelly. Like, she is an incredible musician. It opened my ears and my mind, and the life experience of getting to see the world playing your guitar. That is unbelievable, man.
Yeah, that's what makes you a journeyman, man. Here's a question. Has Sean ever played with Darren James Smith from Here to
Red Dragon Cartel?
Harem Scarum and Red Dragon Cartel, yeah.
You know what? I love Darren, and he's I consider him a good friend. I wouldn't say we've hung out a lot, but I have a lot of respect and admiration for him. I've jammed with him once. We were trying to put a band together at one point, and it would have been great. But man, it was just at that time when Dave Langeth, the drummer, Dave Lang. It was me, Dave Langeth, Darren, and a great bass player, Chris Selden, who is now a world-class maker of fine bass guitars. And but he was my rep at Yamaha when I was endorsed by them doing the classical guitar thing. Yeah, we had a rehearsal and it was great. We just did. It was just a time. I think Darren was just getting the gig with Jakey Lee at that time.
Oh, okay.
Too. And Dave and I were playing with Gilby Clarke and also Nelly. You know, like Chris was busy. Like the schedules were just, you know, wasn't conducive. And this happens all the time. But I've jammed with him once. He's a world-class talent and a lovely human being.
Yeah, you mentioned Gilby Clarke. So did you were playing with Gilby? Did you do any? Were you on any of his records? Because
I'm on the new one. I'm on the new
one.
I'm on the Gospel Truth. I met Gilby because Gilby actually produced the second Crash Kelly record. So we did that record in LA with him at his studio.
Right.
And we became fast friends. He's another guy I consider a mentor, but we're kindred musical spirits, you know. And he kind of mentioned, man, he goes, hey, you know, I'm a trio guy, but if I ever play with another guitar player, I'd love to play with you. And the opportunity came up. He was doing a Canadian run. He said, hey, man, do you know any drummers, and would you play bass? I said, yeah, I'd love to. So I played bass on a Canadian run. That turned into a South American tour, a bunch of US dates. So I spent a couple of years playing with Gilby on and off, and we're still very good friends. And yeah, his new album that came out this year, Gospel Truth, featured some sessions that Dave Langeth and I did with him in LA back almost 10 years ago that just kind of survived. And so I'm actually on there on a song called Rusted and Busted.
Very cool. Very cool. So Nelly Furtado, what time period are we talking about there?
It was 2009 till the last gigs we did were in 2017, I guess.
Okay, that's not too long ago.
No, and we you know, we were in the studio. Like she'll still go in the studio once in a while. She wants to try something. She kind of took a step back from performing.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were in the studio last year working on a few things. You know, we still get together once in a while and make some noise.
Well, she was a big deal in my community because she's Azorian and so am I. So
right on.
Yeah. So when she was like Nelly Furtado, and actually, you know, it's like I had people who were like knew her parents and all this kind of stuff, and it was like, oh, you know, one of our own made it, you know, big time. So that was a bit of a big deal here. You know, it's like we have her and we have Nuno Betancourt. He's the other one.
I was just listening to Nuno tonight.
Oh yeah, there's a beast. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So after Nelly, where do we go from there?
Well, you know, it's funny. It's not a straight shot, right? As I'm talking to you, I'm kind of going, oh yeah, but there was this and this.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of side stuff.
Well, things run parallel sometimes, right? Like,
right.
Even during the Nelly thing, like I was working at a company called Coalition Music, doing some music directing and working with a company that's now known as Canada's Music Incubator on a artist development program called Artist Entrepreneurs. So I was kind of helping develop that and work on that. I was writing. I still maintained a writing relationship with Helix. So I was writing and playing guitar on their studio records. I was working with Carl Dixon, great singer Carl Dixon from Coney Hatch. And that eventually led into me joining Coney Hatch. I play with Coney Hatch now. So there were all these things that were happening. Carole Pope. I mean, I've been playing with Carole Pope and Rough Trade on and off since 2005.
Wow.
So there's all these things that were happening while the Nelly thing was happening, usually in deference to it when Nelly was touring. And then, you know, when you're doing this and that's your kind of main way to make a living, you have to find a way to balance that with, at that time, there was ample studio work. I'd take a job, maybe music directing a pop band or working on a TV show or getting some, you know, going in and playing on people's records and teaching guitar and all sorts of things. I had actually, like I said, I was teaching and I'd been teaching music as well with Toronto Catholic District School Board. Ended up taking a leave of absence to tour. And I recently actually just returned. I'm back teaching now, teaching vocal and instrumental music. So I wish I could give you the straight, easy answer, but the fact is it kind of like ricochets.
Well, I think you kind of, I mean, we're going through your history, but the other thing I kind of want to touch on is, the ability to make, like you said, I mean, I make my life from music. And you kind of answer that sort of indirectly in the sense that you basically have to be open to a bunch of opportunities and you got to take them as they come. So it's like, you can't just, do this and shut everything else off. It's like, when I get a minute, I'm going to jump over here, so it's really all about, and then like the other thing you said that was really valuable is the fact that you went to school and you went to teachers. I'm a teacher too, by the way. You went to teachers college. And that sort of gave you, that sort of foundation that if nothing is going on, I have this to fall back on.
Yeah, it was funny. That was my initial thing with teaching for sure. There's no doubt. But I find teaching so much a part of me. It's one of the most important things I do as a musician. And I teach kindergarten to grade 8. So I'm in there like with kindergarten,
wow,
that's 3 years old, up to like, I can't do concert band now, but soon we'll be able to, hopefully, knock on wood, but do a concert band. And I love it all. And to me, I'm very fulfilled with that. And I don't, to me, it's not the day gig. It's all part of this holistic approach to music making and creating. And I feel very lucky. Like, to me, that was the reward of a career in rock and roll, was coming back to this teaching job. Like, to me, that was what it was all about. That's what led me to that.
Yeah. And I mean, you can expand on this as well, but I mean, what the music industry has become now, I mean, you can't put out a record and I mean, there's nobody backing anymore. There's no record companies. There's none of that. So you have to literally, you have to have your hands in a lot of different pies in order to keep your head above water, right?
Well, and that's it. And then it becomes like, what, you show people how to treat you in a sense, right? Like, it's like, what are you worth? What do you want to do, right? What happened was, technology is a wonderful thing. It allows us to talk right now. It's democratized music. That's a good thing. But it also allowed people to cannibalize each other and our standards of how we get paid. Like, I mean, when you have top session players in Nashville are saying, I'll do all your records. I'll do 5 demos for $100. And they're like, all of a sudden the standards that are put in place by musicians unions, and the expectations are reduced, and people are cutting each other's throats to put in hours and hours and hours of work for peanuts.
Yeah.
Get it. That's why I feel so lucky to work in the classic rock genre, where Rough Trade, Lee Aaron, I work with Alan Frew from Glass Tiger, Coney Hatch. There's standards that we expect. And fortunately, our audiences reciprocate. We play in casinos and theaters, and then in the summer we go to Europe and play in festivals. There's still that built-in respect, and people still buy a physical product too. They still buy albums, and sure, they're streaming and they're enjoying digital platforms. That's great, but there's still that old architecture there that I grew up in, and I fell in love with. So I feel super lucky. I think it's a real challenge for young artists coming up today. I don't know how they do it, but I sure admire the ones who stick it out. And, at the end of the day, artists need to create. They're creating, and they have more access to tools, which is great. I just think it's also a little harder for them to cut through the swath of so many people out there.
Yeah, and be able to derive an income from it. I mean, unless they have a teaching gig or something,
Yeah, like, I mean, you have to pay the bills. And like, I mean, I think the other thing is, I have a family, right? I have 2 kids and I'm married, and I could probably, with the contacts I had before COVID, have stayed out on the road. There was always opportunities. I have calls. Hey man, you want to come out for 2 months? Yeah. That's just not in the cards for me right now. It's just not a choice I want to make. So there still are opportunities for going out touring, and God bless you if you do it. Like, I mean, I respect you greatly, but I love that classic rock happens in the summers and on the weekends. I gotta tell you, so I can go out with recording acts and we can go make world-class records that get in the charts in Europe and do all these things. I feel so lucky, you know, that my preferred genre exists like this. So it kind of worked out for me.
Yeah. Well, it's true. I mean, classic rock is always a big draw, and the people that are digging the classic rock are people our age, and we're used to seeing the festivals and going to the casinos and all that. I mean, I've been to Casino Rama many times, and I've seen lots of bands there. I mean, bands that you want to see, and
it's world-class venue with world-class production.
Yeah,
it's great.
You can't go wrong. Yeah, so, I think where we left off. So Nelly Furtado, I think, is where we left off. So, which brings us kind of almost to the present, because you said like 2017. So in most recent years, you mentioned Coney Hatch. You're working with Coney Hatch currently, and you're writing with Helix.
Yeah, I still write with Brian, and Lee Aaron has been, she's had incredible creative renaissance, and she's she's doing such great work. She still sounds incredible, sings great, performs great, writing. She's producing the record. She's wow. This is going to be, when we put out this record we just did this summer with Mike Fraser, hopefully in 2022, that'll be the 6th release. I've been involved with her since I joined her band in 2015. And that's a pretty good record. Like, she's got a Christmas album coming out in November that she released independently last Christmas. Was a bit of a COVID project, but now it's been picked up for worldwide release and a Japanese domestic release. And that's and that band's just such a joy. Dave Reimer, her husband John Cody on drums. Great.
Cool.
Also, I should also mention, sorry, I forgot. I've been working, I shouldn't say I forgot, but I was also a member of a band called Trapper with Emm Gryner, the great Canadian singer-songwriter, author. And we've had some great experiences too. We toured with Def Leppard. We we have an EP that's coming out soon. Like, there's so many cool things. Did the Dee Snider musical. I've been so lucky over the years.
I was going to ask you about the Dee Snider thing. So how I mean, which kind of brings us right back to where we started with, because you were saying what got you into it was was those Twisted Sisters. So now we're with Dee Snider. So that must have been a real joy.
Well, it was incredible. It was, this is where Mitch Lafone comes into the picture again. I had contributed a song to a Kiss tribute CD that he had put together. I
remember that CD.
Yeah, it was A World with Heroes to benefit a cancer hospice. Montreal. Right. And it was a big success. And I ended up doing a track with Terry Illis, who was the singer of a band called XYZ in America, XYZ here, and sang with Great White. And we did a version of Forever, that song off Hot in the Shade. And did that. And at the time, Mitch had managed to talk John Regan and Todd Howarth from Fraley's Common into contributing a song.
Right.
And then introduced us, because I think at one point they were trying to get Ace Frehley to see if Ace would be interested in doing Fraley's Common again. Ace wasn't interested, so
and they did the
4x. They threw. I ended up joining a band with those two and Stet Hallen from Wasp called 4x, who were managed by Danny Stanton, who was Twisted Sister's agent. Long story short, we're in Belgium.
You were part of 4x?
Yeah, man, I was the first guitar player. I'm the first guy.
Oh, you're the first. Okay. Oh man, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm on the record. I did the first shows. We did the showcase and
the showcase in New York.
Yeah, man, that was me.
Oh shit, I didn't know that was you. Wow.
Yeah, and it was a great band. It was a cool thing. A couple of things happened though. Stet got in a car accident. He hurt himself. AJ Perro from Twisted Sister ended up joining. And then he passed away.
Yeah.
But at the time, I was so busy. My second son was about to be born. They're in the States. I've got all these other gigs. I just wasn't in the headspace to do. So I just said, guys, I love you very much. I'm going to move on from this. They were very understanding. We parted respectfully. We're still very good friends. Pat Gasparini came in. Rob Afuso from Skid Row came in and played. They're going strong. Love those guys. And I remained very good friends with Danny Stanton. So when Dee Snider was bringing his rock and roll Christmas tale to Toronto, I said, hey, man, I thought, get me a job playing guitar in the.
Yeah.
What I didn't realize was it was an acting job and a dancing job. Like, it was a full-on acting role. And I tell you, man, I had to learn a lot quick, but managed to, like, I actually went to the audition. Thank God they couldn't find a guy who could do the 80s guitar stuff that they needed to do in the show. So they liked my guitar playing, but I remembered my casting or talent agent came up and said, I'm sending an acting coach to your house tonight. You got it. And kind of taught me how to get through the audition.
Right.
Got through it. I'll never forget that audition because I'm sitting there playing We're Not Going to Take It in front of Dee Snider. Said, hey, if this is all that happens, great. But it worked out. And I will tell you, Walter, that was probably the greatest professional experience of my life. Was getting involved in that, working with a Broadway choreographer, working with acting coaches, and seeing how a show like that goes together. Having the opportunity to go every day to work and do 2 shows a day and grind. I loved it, man. I loved it. It was wonderful. And where I used to say, "Oh man, I hope I nail this solo," or now I'm going, oh, did they laugh? Did they like the delivery of that joke? Maybe I got to work on the things that, it totally changed my perspective, but I loved it.
Oh, that's awesome, man. That is very cool. Very cool. And it's a small world. So I'm a huge Kiss fan. So anything Kiss related, I kind of, perks me up. It was Twisted Sister for you. It was Kiss for me.
They loom large too, and I love that Fraley's Comet record. Like when we were in Belgium, we were playing a big festival there, and we're playing like into the night. We're playing what else were we doing off that record?
Rock Soldiers was on that record.
Calling to You. We did, we didn't do Rock Soldiers because no one's going to do the Ace part. We did, but like Calling to You and doing all that stuff.
Yeah,
it was awesome, man. And John Regan. The guy's played with the Stones, played with Bowie, David Lee Roth, John Waite, like Stephen Stills, and he's the most humble guy. And once again, these are the things I take away from it. It's the lessons you get working with master musicians who end up being good people too. Like it's great, man.
I mean, he's a Facebook friend for me on Facebook, John Regan. And if I have like a birthday or something, he'll actually say happy birthday. He'll put it like, that's John Regan, man. He's got time for you. He must have like 1,000, but he takes that 2 seconds and
he means it.
Yeah.
He's that guy.
I'd love to have that guy on the show. That would be a thrill. But that's
he's a gentleman beyond.
Yeah.
I love him.
Yeah, he I can tell. He's definitely one of the good ones. Yeah. So we got about 10 minutes left. I'm gonna just open it up here to see if anyone has any. Cecil Music is saying John Regan and Todd Howarth are total class.
Oh yeah, Todd, love Todd too, and great guitar player, great singer. The guy plays amazing keyboards too.
He's got pipes. He definitely has pipes. Yeah. All right. Yeah. If anyone has questions, now's the time to pop them in. Before we let Sean go, because I know Sean's got a split at 9:00. So So while we're waiting for some questions to come in, is there anything that you want to promote stuff coming up? Or you've got a YouTube channel or?
It's funny. I'm doing a couple of shows with Carole Pope next week. I'm excited about playing the Biltmore Theater in Oshawa and the Oakville Performing Arts Center. So, it's always a joy playing with Carole, legend. And I'm working on my second book. My first book was Metal on Ice.
Let's talk about the book. Yeah, sure. Sorry. Thanks for bringing that up. So, let's talk about the book. So when did you decide I'm going to be an author and I'm going to write some of these things down?
Well, the first book came out in 2013. Like I said, Metal on Ice, and that was a book about Canada's, Canadian rock in the 80s. Because I'm a music junkie. I must read 3 music books a week. I can't stop reading about rock and roll.
Right.
But any Canadian book I read, I never heard anything about these bands that I love. Kick-Ass, Helix, and White Wolf, and Lee Aaron, and like Coney Hatch. Like, I was there watching arena shows, and you're writing about some obscure bands that didn't have, a tenth of the success of some of these bands, but it's been washed over. So I wanted to write a book that kind of told their story and kind of shed some light on some of the accomplishments and what they did for the Canadian music industry, even abroad, like a band like Helix going out and getting an American record deal and kind of, and making strides, Anvil making strides in Europe, all these bands making an impact, and we should be recognizing them. So that was the first book. And now the second book I'm writing is, how do I describe it? It's really a love letter to hair metal, and while also being, I'm kind of making a case that the best of hair metal, hair metal being kind of a derisive term, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
It doesn't mean, it's not really derisive now. People have kind of come to have an affection for it, but when it first came out, it was taking the piss, right?
Yeah.
And I'm making a case that the best of it deserves to be called proper rock and roll. So I'm kind of saying that, we should be looking at this through the prism of great rock and roll music. Like lumping Cinderella in with a Pretty Boy Floyd, as much, that's no diss on Pretty Boy Floyd. I'm just saying there's diversity there. It's not the same type of thing. So I think I'm trying to highlight the diversity in 80s rock, point to some of the influences that some might call hipper. Like, if someone say, "Oh, enough's enough," that's cheesy, but you're not hearing the Elvis Costello in there or the Cheap Trick in there. So it's a deep dive musical analysis, but it's also me standing up for it and saying, this isn't a guilty pleasure. This is good music. Yeah. And also coming to terms with the fact that some of the music I love might have some serious flaws, especially lyrically, when you look at it in 2022,
Well, I tell you, I'm doing a Ted Nugent show with Martin next week, and Ted Nugent's lyrics. I mean, with all that stuff that's going on now, that guy.
Yeah, like I mean, it's like there's a good example, right? Because Ted Nugent is an innovative and exciting electric guitar player, and he'd be the first to tell you. But I mean, some of the things he says to me are abysmal. Like, I mean, he sounds like an idiot to me, and yet, this is like dichotomous thing I wrestle with, right? It's like, okay, I think you're a knucklehead, but on the other hand, I love your guitar playing, right?
Yeah, he plays good guitar.
What's that?
And damn, but he plays good guitar, and he's got great songs.
Well, and they're great songs, and it's important music, right? But this is the thing. Like, I mean, you can have duality of mind. Like, I mean, I don't have to think that, every Motley Crue lyrics is the greatest thing in the world, but I can still really appreciate the musical aspects of Too Fast for Love or Shout the Devil. It's kind of a look at that, a look at the complexities that lie within, our own contradictions of how we listen to music. Really, it's turning it. When you write a book, you end up writing about 5 books. That's the way I look at it, because you keep turning over itself, right?
Right. Somebody threw in a link for your Metal on Ice book, which is very cool. Yeah, so check that out, folks. And if you want to email me, I will include in the description of this video. I'll include a couple of links to that book and anything else that you're working on currently. Maybe Lee Aaron's album.
Yeah, the Radio On record came out in July. Very proud of that record.
Anything that you want, I can throw in the link, because people will watch this after the fact.
Yeah, there's Coney Hatch live album we put out live from the Elm Combo too, that we did last year. Very proud of that.
Yeah, that was the live streaming thing that you guys did. Yeah. I heard about that. that. Yeah,
that was a lot of fun, and what a beautiful venue.
Elm Combo. Yeah.
Oh, they've done a great job with it. It's just world class in there. Like, it was It's like having an arena rock show, but you're in this cozy little hang. Like, it's really blended the best of all those rock and roll experiences together.
Yeah, because there was a time they said that place was just going to be shut down completely, right?
Yeah, but it's happening, man. It's happening.
Yeah, somebody saved it. Yeah, just very cool, very cool. All right. Okay. Here's we'll go with this last question. So Quentin James is asking, what's Sean's go-to 80s rig?
My go-to 80s rig?
80s rig. Yeah.
I'll tell you, I use a pedal board called the Head Rush. And this Head Rush pedal board is so great. The amp sims that are in this, the Marshall amp simulators, are so good. What I've been using is Tracy Guns actually designed a set of presets for it. His presets are so good with slight tweaks. That's all. That's what I'm basically running. It's basically the Head Rush unit. And shout out to my buddy Jer at Head Rush. Yeah, so that's just, to me, it's great because I always loved Tracy's sound anyway, because he had kind of the classic Les Paul Marshall thing, but he also had, I like the way his delays would bloom and, the choruses and stuff. So I really like the Head Rush. But you know what? Honestly, as much as I love, and I'm a child of the 80s, my fingers come out 70s. So I'm really a Les Paul and a Plexi or a Fender Deluxe guy. If I go into the studio, the things that make up my kind of identity are a Deluxe on one side, a Plexi on the other, and then Les Paul Juniors, Les Pauls, and Strats. Like, I mean, I'm more old school Alice Cooper, even though I love Vito Bratta and I'll talk about him all day long. I love George Lynch. I love Jake E. Lee. I have elements of that in my playing for sure, but really I come out like a Jimmy Page type thing. It's Aerosmith, Joe Perry, Jimmy Page,
Ace. Yeah, totally get that. All right.
I have to say, I did just buy a Jackson. I bought a Jackson with pink.
Oh, you got a Floyd now?
I've got a bunch of guitars with Floyd and collars or Kalers. I don't know how you pronounce it, but I do love all that stuff.
Cool. All right, Sean, I want to thank you so much. I don't want to keep you long, but actually hang on here for a second. I want to thank everybody for checking out the show. You guys absolutely rock. There are links below if you want to help support the channel. There's Guitar Hack hats, there's t-shirts, there's a PayPal there. Join my Facebook group, all that's down there, my Instagram. That would be all much appreciated. I want to thank Sean for doing this. It took 2 months, but man, it was a great show. It was well worth it. Thank you so much.
Sorry it took so long, man. I appreciate your patience, and I hope I didn't go too far off the beaten path on you tonight.
Oh no, man, this is perfect. I mean, I always know a good interview when the time flies by, and this hour just absolutely flew by. So I want to thank everybody for checking out the show. Next week at 12:30 in the afternoon on the Wednesday, I will be doing a Ted Nugent Top 5 show with Martin Popoff and Pete Pardo. So make sure you're here for that next week. And have a great week, everybody. Take care, and we'll see you. Cheers.